Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and I'm taking a look at the second Master X series entry in X-Transbots' masterpiece-alike lineup, the Scourging Sweeper, known as Andras, and his little friend Rimfire. I've got this fellow on loan for review, and I think he's close enough to production to say that he's basically a production piece. Thanks to Madhouse Toys for setting this up. Andras turns into a bit more of a space torpedo than a space soap bar, looking more equally rounded and less flattened than his source material. Many of the finer details are there, from the topside central slope to the also topside triple blast nozzle things near the back. The colors definitely feel a touch more toyetic to me than showetic, though the placements, like the two topside patches of non-uniform blue, are definitely show-inspired. There are also 3 pieces of fold-away landing gear which create a neat illusion of small-scale hovering when you view the vehicle mode from the top. With them stored away, there's a clear flight stand you can use that looks kind of almost identical to the KFC Sencho Barbosa stand design. It tabs into a slot that's hidden by a well-executed spring-loaded trapdoor and gives Andras a slight angle that looks hell of dynamic when he's on display. You can plug his Targetmaster buddy into a topside slot near the front, though sadly you cannot get silly and plug the guy into the top of Andras' hidden robot mode head like on the old G1 toy. The same slot can also be used for the regular blue rifle if you want to get all pre-Nebulon. I dig either option, but both weapons can be stored thanks to an alternate plug-in spot for the blue rifle. If you open up the main right-hand cape panel, you can stick the thing snugly into place hidden within the spaceboat's hull. Or you can remove it like I did in this footage. It's like Memento. Kinda. Oh, also, there's an extendable rod beneath Andras' head that allows him to do that ridiculous thing Scourge does where he peeks up out of his own alt mode. Thing is, this rod is insanely tight, and takes a lot of twisting and working to extend or compress. But hey, it's a classic Scourge gimmick, albeit an incredibly dumb one, and it's cool that it found a place to hide out within this figure. The 3 blast nozzle thingies have also got electronics in them, requiring a total of 9 LR521 batteries, 3 batteries per light installation. This copy of the toy only had 6 batteries, so I've loaded up the central electronics and one of the 2 side LEDs. Basically, you need to remove the 2 cap pieces from the front and rear of the nozzle, then pull out 3 screws. The rear needle nose cap pieces can be really easy to knock out of place while playing with the toy, so if you got particularly loose ones, add a bit of thickener, like floor polish, to the lower ring area to stiffen up the connection. Like, make a shallow pool of floor polish in a bottle cap and just dip the thing in very slightly and let it dry. Anyway, here's what the open battery compartment looks like. Think that's a lot of work? To install the central cranial electronics, you need to first remove a screw from either side of Andras' neck. Doing all this in alt mode with his head extended is the easiest setup, by the way. With those screws out, remove his head, then remove the screw from the back of his head to split the whole thing open. Now you can focus on his cranial nozzle, which opens up just like the 2 regular side-mounted ones. Remove the 2 caps, then the 3 screws, and split it open to install the batteries. The fit is tight in all 3 battery cavities, and removing the batteries is a pain in and of itself. Also, the central electronics split the power between his forehead LED and his optic LED, meaning those 2 things shine more dimly than either of the side-mounted LEDs, which, by the way, are fairly hidden in robot mode. What I've done to solve the problem of the particularly dim optic LEDs is stick a small piece of aluminum foil up into the head cavity behind the optic LED itself to contain and reflect the crimson lights into the actual eyepiece. The effect is so much better now! I also had to bend the wiring of the optic LED a bit, as its stock shape meant that fully rescrewing the head together cut off the power circuit until I loosened it a bit. All in all, this is a whole lot of boring, complicated busywork for very little payoff. Removing screws is always a pain and a risk, and having the user basically disassemble Andras' head is totally ridiculous. Put in some battery installation hatches if you really want to do this, guys. Anyway, transforming Andras into robot mode is a godsend after going through those electronics. I mean, a comfortable chair or a piece of toast would also be a godsend in this context, but what I'm trying to say is that I really like how this guy converts. A good third of the work is the unpeeling and configuration of Andras' cape, and while it's a little bendy and angle tab loaded at first glance, I found that a little practice went a long way in making this part a breeze. It also helps that the quality of the cape plastic seems to be built for all of this bending and peeling. And it double helps that the toy's designer, 598, put up a video of his own to talk users through the transformation. Check that out as well if you haven't already. The backside of the cape is a little messy, but sticks to the theme of layered panel pods to a decent enough degree. But these legs, or more specifically, those shins and feet, this is a tricky maneuver that takes a few tries and possibly a demonstration or two to get right. Basically, with the main shin pod halfway folded up, you get just enough room to thread the balled up foot through the pod's lower cavity. This will definitely become an easier thing to do with time, but man, I can't help but wonder if a hatch to widen that cavity temporarily would have been worth implementing. It's surprisingly particular about its entry angles, and the foot needs to be balled up in a similarly particular way to make it through that opening when transforming into either mode. I hope the instruction sheet spends a lot of its ink budget on these steps. Somewhat related, but my loaner copy of the toy did not include any instructions. With that out of the way, the rest of the transformation is a legitimate cakewalk and a pleasant one at that. The hands use the tried and tested forearm hatch reveal trick, and the collar makes the act of halfway turning inside out kinda easy. Also, I love the punctuation of sliding the cape up to lock into place for robot mode. It is satisfying, man, and it goes like, click! Guys, this looks a hell of a lot like Scourge, and the main plastic color of his body has this very slight metallic flake that puts a happiness in my heart. A slight amount of paintwork adds in spots of red and patches of pale blue, and there's a pleasant foot-based heft thanks to some die-cast construction. The cape is totally messy in the back, and takes some liberties with its shape to stretch out its second lower spike to cover some of that up from the front, but it is such a delightful shape and looks awesome in all its dark blue glory. Even the folded rear landing gear pods blend in pretty well, and it has a viciously vampiric silhouette. Of course, the pink and pointy fingertips can only point in one direction, and that direction is Robot Beardsville! Andras has a great head sculpt with proper robot facial hair, suffering only in its choice of expression. His mouth is kinda open in mid-bellow, and I really would have preferred it to be shut. Also, the eyes are a little hollow if they aren't lit up. Their plastic is a separate piece on the inside, so if you're up for it, you could probably paint them in to have them permanently end-reddened. Andras has got a pair of flip-open gimmicks in his torso, with the simplest being a belly panel that folds down to reveal the key to the plasma energy chamber. The main thing to point out here is that the joint is actually on an internal piston extension, which lets things hold together nice and seamless when it's stored away. Andras' other torso gimmick is on the top of his chest, which reveals a pair of fairly flappy tech detail panels. If you get them open, you can slot the MP10 Matrix of Leadership in there quite securely. In fact, it can be a bit of an angles trick to get it in or out if things feel stuck. Unfortunately, the technology does not yet exist to have the toy spontaneously mutate when it's in there, but it's a cool little addition nonetheless. Those pointy pink fingers hide a slot in Andras' palm, into which either or both of his guns can be plugged in. If you're attaching Rimfire, you'll be better off untransforming the Targetmaster's arms to get him out of the way until you get the handle seated. The connection is pretty solid once it's in, at least on this copy of the toy. You can't straight up replace his hand with the Targetmaster's gun mode if you're into that kind of thing, but I'm not, so whatever, dude. Speaking of Rimfire, this little guy is basically the same toy as Adder, the sneak peek TFCon exclusive that I reviewed a few months ago. His colors are, of course, way more Target-mastery, looking properly like a silver robot man wearing black pants. Like Adder, the facial paint apps are superb, and also like Adder, the final gun mode is somewhat questionable. However, Rimfire tweaks one of my biggest problems with the mold, and adds a pair of little pegs so that his arms have something to lock into in gun mode. And they lock on kinda loosely. Oh well. It's something at least! The transformation is a lovely journey, even if one of its endpoints is rather weak, and the robot mode is very nicely posable, and also is not the weak endpoint. As I said in the Adder review, had X-Transbots fitted a pair of bicep swivels into this guy's arms and maybe a waist swivel to boot, he'd have been a friggin' perfect little robot man. As it is, he's no slouch, just be aware of his very specific limitations. And if you've got Adder, you can totally outfit Andras with twin handgun men. Adder's blue plastic is not quite a match for Andras's, but the big bearded Chaos Tracker still looks quite dashing with twin beefcake cannons in his hands. And if you want, you can totally have Rimfire riding Adder as a turret in Andras's spaceboat mode. An immobile turret that can only shoot straight forwards, but let the pew 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 fly fast and hard, ladies and gentlemen. Andras has a kind of Hisui car neck in that he's got like a rather tight swivel left and right, which is only really blocked by his collar, which you could move out of the way if you want to, I guess, but then it would look silly. He also has a little bit of up and down nod, but strangely enough, This is at its most limited when he's in robot mode. There's a bit more range on this when he's just like a head peeking up out of his alt mode. So it's not a super useful joint. He can't look up all that far, he can't look down all that far. On the bright side, he can look left and right. I guess, I mean, that's the bright side of a neck joint, right? Anyway, his shoulders are a lot more friendly, because they make this lovely, durable, clickety noise, and it's a little bit buttery, so it's not horrifically impedimentary, and there's a lot of clicks as well. Like, from down to 90, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 clicks! That's good stuff. And it's a very, like, smooth and tight friction joint going outwards. There's also a smooth and tight friction bicep swivel, a double-jointed elbow, which is from the transformation, but looks pretty nice. And there is, if you use the top joint first, you keep a lot of the arm shape while bending said elbow, and that is also very useful. The wrist can swivel. It's best to do that by grabbing the non-opposable part of the hand, that being this bit here, and then just twisting it. It's tight but smooth, so if you twist on the immobile knuckle guard, the fingers won't start going all crazy nuts. By the way, those fingers, they make for some pretty good-looking fists. I'm impressed by that. Talking about the hands more specifically, these hands have got 5 fingers. 4 of those fingers are very similar in how they work. There are little ball joint stalks connecting each one, which means you can get a little bit of spread, which I'm quite happy to see. I like it when the fingers can spread, so you can go all Mr. Spock. There are also cuts in the front so that these fingers can go all the way forward for that fist kind of thing. There are also 2 hinges on each one, one here and one here, so they can curl. They are great fingers. If I had one qualm, it's that I kind of wish they were more, like, defined different lengths, like that the index finger was, and the middle finger especially, were definitively bigger than the pinky finger. But that's a thing about fingers that I think extends to more than just these. But man, let's do it. A similar little ball joint stalk connects the thumb, and its cut allows it to fold down this way, and then it has a hinge there and a hinge here, so the thumb can totally be all like, yeah, that's cool, or like thumb wrestle, or fist it up. These fingers are good. They don't feel super fragile. They could maybe be like 1% tighter, but they don't feel floppy enough to just go all out of place when you're posing the toy. But if you bump them, they will. They have a real nice, like, silky smoothness that is what I was hoping for. And on the bright side, it's all friction joints that are probably easily tightenable with some floor polish. But hopefully we don't get to that point until like a couple years from now. Anyway, his waist has got a ratchet joint that can go 1 click in either direction, because all his back junk bumps into all this junk. His waist could have been a bit better, I think. If all this stuff could have, like, folded up a little bit to get out of the way, then he'd have had a less impediment of his wastial motions. But speaking about that backpack, it's got a bunch of joints. There are some little hingy joints here that have this much range. Not a ton, but it's a helpful click back. Both for transformation and for posing his arms. They also get 2 clicks up, so they can spread out and look like he's about to go on some kind of crazy, spooky Batman attack. And I'm real happy about that, because I like dynamic wings on a Scourge and or Sweep, and for not having an enormous range of posability, like just this and this little bit of flap, that's a whole lot. And then the topper is that if he's standing kind of at attention, you can fold these outer parts in to kind of close it up a bit and make it, I don't know, calmer, make his wings look more at ease. So if there's one downside, it's that when you do this, you reveal some of the stuff back here, and you know, these parts are sticking down to try to cover that in this orientation. I can live with that. Like, the back is not the cleanest thing in the world, and I don't think this really takes away from the look in front, because generally, even if he's doing this, I'm not seeing, like, that more so than I'm seeing all this, at least to my view. Speaking of all this, I can't get him to actually work with his flight stand in robot mode, which is a bummer. I can't find any way to connect it down here, and I wish I could so he could be all, like, floating and looking menacing. But his legs, as you saw, have got a decent amount of menaceability. There's a clicking ratchet for forward and backward motion. He's not able to get them fully like 90 degrees up and forward, unless you twist his thigh swivel. Then you can get them up like that, but then his foot is sideways. That is just a regular swivelly thigh swivel. Works pretty well. It's the same kind of nice smooth tightness as up here on this motion, and you get that kind of smooth tightness on this motion, which I'm cool with. Like, I am real happy that there is like a very like multi-click forward motion here. I can live without ratchets going outwards, especially with the current fashion of these ratchets. Like, the first click would be from here to like here. If this stays this tight for a while, then I'm cool with it. Also, these skirt bits can get out of the way if you want. The knee is double jointed to facilitate just a basic 90-degree knee bend, but with these big smooth bulbs of his shins, it's pretty impressive. There's a regular friction joint, and then a clicky joint, and you can get them to bend like this. If you click one more time, and then do that, it looks like that. That probably means something to somebody, but I like that this can be pulled off with the shapes of his shins. Like, the transformation having a cutout back here to facilitate that entirely is a real big boon. His feet have got big-ass ankle tilts. They tilt all the way down here and look stupid. You can also use the transformation joint to move them forwards or backwards, but they have to be tilted when you're doing that. Otherwise, there's no room for them to do that. As for his toe, like, you can wiggle it. You can reposition either the ratcheted or non-ratcheted joints on his heel. I wouldn't really recommend it, though, unless you're experimenting a bunch and know what you're doing. Like, I generally just try to get this set up so that all of these surfaces... actually, this could use a little bit of a tweak. Like that. So that all of these surfaces across here are pretty much on the same plane. And then if you set him down and, tilt his ankles, twist his thighs, that makes for a real solid stance. And those heel pieces are a super big help. The ratcheted part... I thought the ratcheted part would be immediately counteracted by the non-ratcheted part, but it ain't. It holds him up real well. I've not had any balance problems with this dude. And he looks cool, man. He's not, like, super duper posable, but I think that he's decently posable. If I could have asked for anything else, it would be, like, more range on the waist and more range on the neck, and maybe some kind of crunch, but I don't need it. But I really am impressed with how this dude feels. I can shake him, like, I can just push him back there, don't have to worry about anything. I haven't dropped him at all, but I have carried him in a shopping bag that was then knocked over by a dog, and he survived that okay, too. So, that's his story. What's yours? Let me make it crystal clear. I have handled Apollyon for all of about 45 seconds as of this recording. So Andras is basically my first full-on experience with X-Transbots Master X series, and I really dig him, mainly because he feels built about as solidly as a good official Transformers collector piece. This plastic and fit and finish certainly aren't on the upper echelon of unofficial product, but the toy does not feel very fragile despite the fact that his hands contain lots of tiny parts and his cape panels go through a lot of flexi stress in transformation. The electronics are where things get risky, annoying, and absurd to set up, but at the end of the day they're also entirely skippable with minimal impact, other than the fact that there are 3 LED circuits in there that you paid for regardless. The Targetmaster's gun mode still could use some work, but he makes a fine and dynamic addition to the package if you look at him as a fancy accessory. Features like the 2 torso gimmicks or the extendo neck in alt mode also creep in extra touches of high-end panache. And overall, Andras feels like a sturdy and fun masterpiece package. He represents Scourge very well in both modes, clocks in at impressive sizes in both modes, and has a build quality that makes me feel no fear in just playing with the guy. It's a shame his price point ends up clearing $150 US, as that makes me give the fiddly and futzy electronics a real hard glare. But if you're in the market for a high-end sweep and/or sweep leader, he's totally worth consideration. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and that price point went a long way in dashing any thought of army-building Andrases right out of my head. Have you heard a Canadian whine about the state of the Canadian dollar in 2015? 'Cause I sure can. Have a seat. And let me tell you...